Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a champion that can now be played in 3 different roles. Kayn can now be played in the jungle, the mid lane, and in the top lane. It turns out that after the buffs he did receive in this patch, he's actually doing very well in the top lane and in the mid lane. So in this video we're going to be going over why it works, how to play it, the setup, everything that you need to know for lane Kayn in 10.9. So in this patch, Kayn's Q got a buff to where it now deals the bonus damage to minions, so lane minions instead of only monsters. So this just allows for top lane and mid lane Kayn to be much stronger. It allows for especially mid lane Kayn to very easily push in waves and to just hard shove a wave, look for a roam play either top lane or bot lane. And once you get your team out, once you get your Moby boots, it just makes it so that you can have really good map impact with this champion. Now, after the buffs to Kayn's Q in this patch, it is on a 6-second cooldown at rank 1 in it, and when you compare that to a lot of other bruiser champions' main damage ability at rank 1, it's on a much shorter cooldown. If you compare that to like Renekton Q, it's an 8-second cooldown at rank 1, Darius Q 9-second, Garen Q 8 seconds, so you have this window to where you can trade with Kayn and then you can back off, wait for your Q to come back up. When your Q comes back up, you're gonna have that short window to where you can just look to trade with the opponent and they're not going to have their ability back up yet, so you can actually win some pretty good trades in the early game with Kayn due to the fact that your Q is on a very short cooldown. Due to the fact that you are going to be trading a lot more in the early game as well, collecting a lot more orbs reliably with Kayn, it means that you're usually going to hit a quicker transformation with them, get to your form faster than you would on jungle Kayn, so it allows for you to come online a little bit sooner into the game. And if you do play mid Kayn, once you finish your Moby boots and if you do go for a Tiamat, you just have insane roam potential. It's even better than Talent, I'd have to say, because of the way his E can just go through walls and the movement speed that you have from the Moby boots. And then if you end up rushing a Youmuu's as well, like you can just go from mid to bot lane in a matter of seconds and just pick up a lot of free kills down bot lane. So just really good roam potential coming out of this champion. So for how you should be looking to play it in the early game, you really want to focus on trying to get as many orb stacks as possible going there. So just play around the short cooldown on your Q. Kayn is especially good in lane against champions who do have like longer early game cooldowns. So if you're going up against a champion like Sylas, he's got a very long cooldown on his E in the early game, very long cooldown on his W. So if he just wastes those abilities or if he trades into you and then those abilities are down, you're gonna have your Q back up way sooner than his abilities are gonna be back up there. So you can just look to take advantage of that and get some really nice trades off for yourself in the laning phase. And because of that short cooldown on your Q as well, you can actually look to go for level 1 all-ins depending on your matchup. If you're going up against a champion who doesn't really have any good dueling potential at level 1, or if they have a very long cooldown ability at level 1, you can just look to trade very aggressively into them, especially if you're playing up in top lane. It's a much longer lane, so you can chase them down the lane there and they're not really going to expect it a lot of the time. In the background gameplay here, we're going to see Kayn going up against a Jarvan, so it's not a matchup you're going to see very often. You don't really see Jarvan top lane, but he doesn't really have super good trading potential at level 1 there, at least compared to Kayn. So you notice the Kayn just plays very aggressive, ends up chunking Jarvan out, burns his flash, and just has full control of the lane after that point. So once it does reach a little bit later on into the laning phase, if you're playing mid Kayn, you should just be looking to shove and roam, impact the map. Once it does reach the mid to late game, if you're playing RvzStealth, then you should just be looking to team fight, look to be that front line for your team. If you're playing Shadow Assassin, you should be looking for flank opportunities, look to get onto the back line, assassinate the high priority target. So if we move on to taking a look at the setup now that you should be running, first on top lane Kayn, and then after we'll go over mid lane Kayn. So for top Kayn, it's going to be Conquer as your keystone every single game. For your primary runes there, Triumph or Presence of Mind can work very well. A lot of pro players, a lot of high elo players are preferring the Presence of Mind in this patch, and it's actually doing a little bit better right now than the Triumph. Top lane Kayn and just Kayn in general does run into mana issues, so by going for the Presence of Mind there, it just kind of nullifies that a little bit and it allows you to just not run into those mana issues as often. And then the Tenacity and Last Stand are pretty much set in stone for every single game. And then for secondary runes there, you can either go Inspiration or Domination. If you're in a very easy early game matchup, if you don't feel like you need that added sustain from Inspiration, you can go for Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter. But in a lot of your matchups with Kayn, the early game is the hardest part. So most pros right now, most high elo players that are playing this Kayn are liking the Biscuits and the Time Word Tonic, and then going for the Corrupting Potion potion as their starting item just to allow themselves more sustain in the laning phase. You want to be able to trade very aggressively with Kayn in lane to get your orb stacking. So by going for this corrupting start, by going for biscuits and time warp, it just allows for you to do that a little bit better. And then for your setup on mid lane Kayn, it's really just going to come down to which setup is going to be the best for the game that you're playing. So I feel like a common misconception with mid lane Kayn right now is that you need to go Shadow Assassin every single game and that you need to play Kayn mid as an assassin, but that's really not the case. Rast is still perfectly viable, and I'd say it's actually even stronger than Shadow Assassin in a lot of situations when you're playing mid lane Kayn. If the enemy team comp is not very squishy at all, if they have more like melee champions or if they're more tanky, I would 100% be looking to go Rast on mid lane Kayn. But if the enemy team comp is very squishy, if they don't have many tanks on their team, then I would say that Shadow Assassin is best for that scenario. So for the rune setups there, Dark Harvest is working best right now for Shadow Assassin, going for Sudden Impact, Eyeball, and Relentless Hunter. And then for your secondary runes, taking the Presence of Mind and the Coup de Grace. Like I was talking about when we're going over top lane Kayn, he does run into mana issues, so by going for Presence of Mind, it does help you out a lot with that. And then if you are playing Rast, pretty much the same page that you'd want to go if you're playing top lane Kayn, so Conquer, going for either Triumph or Presence of Mind, Tenacity, Last Stand. And then for secondary runes there, you can swap out Domination for Inspiration as well, depending on your matchup. So if you are in a more difficult early game matchup, if you do want that added sustain, then instead of going for Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter, you can go for the Biscuits and you can take Time Wart Tonic. So now taking a look at the builds here, if you're playing top lane Kayn, Black Cleaver into Death's Dance is just very standard for this patch. It seems to be the best two core items on Kayn right now, so you really don't want to be passing up on those two items no matter the game. As your third item though, it's going to depend on the enemy composition, so if they're very heavy AP, 100% Spirit Visage is going to be really good for those games. If you're going up against a mainly AD heavy composition though, or if they do have like a lot more burst damage, AD burst, then going for Steric's Gauge as your third item is a good option. And then later on into the game, it's all going to depend on the situation. So you can grab a Guardian Angel if you want more survivability. You can look to grab like a Thornmail or an Adaptive Helm depending on the enemy's composition. So I would usually go pretty much full tank after you do complete your Black Cleaver and your Death's Dance. But I guess also one important thing to note for top lane Kayn is that most players, most pros are not going for a Tiamat rush. The wave clear you get from Q and W is completely adequate. You don't really need that added wave clear from Tiamat. It's a bit overkill to be honest, so you can just go straight into your Black Cleaver and your Death's Dance and you don't have to waste any gold on that Tiamat. Now for mid lane Kayn though, going for Tiamat Rush is completely viable. The main thing that you should be looking to do with mid lane Kayn is you should be going for Tiamat, going for Moby Boots, and just trying to perma shove that wave and look to roam. By going for the Tiamat, it pretty much allows for you to WQ Tiamat the wave and just instantly clear it out. So it just allows for you to very quickly be able to clear a wave, look for roam opportunities, and look to impact the map. After your Tiamat and your Moby Boots, going for a Yomu's, a Duskblade, just building mid Kayn pretty much exactly as to how you'd build him in the jungle after you do grab that Tiamat. And then if you do decide to go Rast in the mid lane, same build as you'd play him in the top lane. So going for Black Cleaver, going for Death's Dance, then Steric's Gauge, pretty standard stuff there if you are going for Rast. And then for your ability maxing here, this is very important because it is going to depend on which form you go for. So if you do decide to go Rast, Q first into W second and then E last is what's working best at the moment. However, if you are going for Shadow Assassin, 3 points into Q and then W max is what works best. The reason you want to go for this is because you still want 3 points into Q, so it does give you enough wave clear there throughout the early game, but you do want to be maxing your W out before you finish maxing your Q, just because your W has a lot more damage on it. If you're playing Shadow Assassin, you're playing for that one shot, right? And by maxing your W out first there, or by maxing your W out after 3 points into Q, it is going to make it so that your one shot potential is much better there in the mid game. So if we go over some matchups now for Kayn, first let's take a look at top lane. A couple of the best bans for this patch right now. Garen's a really good ban. He does tend to struggle in that matchup. Quinn, Teemo, like any ranged top laner is pretty difficult for Kayn because he wants to be able to play aggressively. He wants to be able to trade a lot in the laning phase, but when you're playing up against a Quinn, playing up against a Teemo, you really can't do that because they just poke you out and you have a very difficult time just getting on top of them. Urgot's also a very good pick into Kayn at the moment, and then Darius, very strong laning top laner, so it's pretty difficult for Kayn to do well into that pick. He wants to be able to trade aggressively in the laning phase. He wants to get his orbs, but against Darius, if you try to do that, you're probably just gonna end up dying in the 1v1. And then best bans if you're playing mid Kayn at the moment, really any champion that's got good early game kill threat against you is more difficult for him. So the Talon, the Fizz, the Diana, pretty difficult matchups. The Vladimir, more so of an annoying matchup to where you're never really going to be able to kill him in the laning phase, and he is going to outscale you pretty hard in the mid to late game. And then for Cassiopeia, once she does get tier, she's got a lot of consistent damage, so it is a more annoying matchup to deal with as well. Alright, so that is going to round out the video, guys. Hopefully this does give you a really good idea as to why Kayn mid and Kayn top lane is now pretty viable for this patch and how you should be looking to play it in 10.9. If you guys did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.